Welcome to Behavioral Grooves. My name is Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan, and today we are having a mini grooving session on consistency.
Consistency. So actually, we just completed a podcast with Bob Cialdini, and he wrote one of the most influential books ever
Called
Influence. And in it, he listed out the 6 principles of influence. And one of those principles is the principle of consistency, which states once people make a decision, take a stand, or perform an action, they will face an interpersonal pressure to behave in a consistent manner with what they have said or done previously. And we are going to take this and apply it to a current component, and we're looking at politics today.
Yeah, because there's some big deal stuff going on in the U.S. and the U.K., so we want to talk about those specifically.
So right now in the U.S., there is a standoff and a government shutdown between President Trump, who is saying that he will not approve of any funding for the government unless there is a certain amount, $5 billion or so dollars, included in the budget for a wall between Mexico and the United States. And Nancy Pelosi, who is the Democratic lead, who is saying we will not put a funding proposal forward that includes that $5 billion for a wall. So they are at an impasse.
They are. And in the UK, we've got Prime Minister Theresa May, who is absolutely stuck to her commitment to get the UK to leave the European Union, Brexit, and Jeremy Corbyn, the opposition party, who is saying we should scrap this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not working. Everything is failing.
And so in both of those, what we want to explore and just have a conversation about here is how much of this stubbornness that they are having is due to this element of consistency, because they have very public statements about the position that they're in. And then I want to go in and explore, and I think we want to explore, how does that impact their followers? So those people who are in the U.S., either Republican or those who are Democratic. So let's have a groove. Let's go.
So let's start in the U.S. Let's just start with this idea that both parties tend to like their leaders to be, well, we all express this ideal to be consistent.
Yes.
We like it personally. We like it socially. It's important both on a cultural level. We like consistency, and we like consistency on an individual level. And yet, within the political parties, we also know that flip-flopping happens. We know that our political leaders change their tune, and according to Liliana Mason, this whole idea that we're willing to forego the greater good in exchange for party loyalty allows us to kind of skip over they weren't consistent, but that's okay because I'm still part of that group.
But
I'm going to support them.
Yeah, and so that goes to the point of saying, all right, so how much can a political leader shift in what they're doing before they start losing the support of their followers? And particularly, this is a high profile, this is front page news, top of every news show component of what's going on. And so they have made very public, very strong statements. And again, they are pandering to their base.
Absolutely.
And so what happens if one blinks? What is the fallout of that? I mean,
there doesn't appear to be very much.
Well, is it different for Trump than it is for Pelosi? Because I believe, for whatever reason, the diehard adherence to Trump
is stronger than they're. In fact, they're
much stronger than it is to Pelosi.
In fact, I'd say there is no diehard commitment or backing of Pelosi. At least to my appearance,
to our Minnesotan viewpoint here.
Yeah, kind of here in flyover land,
right? And I would probably agree with that. But so if Nancy blinked and said, we are going to, first, I don't know if she can get her congressional tribe, even though she's the Speaker of the House, that in and of itself doesn't hold that much power, nor does she necessarily have that authority that she can dictate what goes into that funding bill, unless she actually was able to convince the others. And I don't think that will happen. But I find it really interesting that I think with her, if she flipped, she would have much more of a negative consequence from that. Than if Trump with his base.
Right, because Trump's base is more likely to allow him to have that flexibility for some kind of whatever rationale he uses. And I think that in the past couple of years, since the campaign started, his campaign started, we've seen a bunch of inconsistencies, a bunch of things happen that the core Trump supporters have been willing to say, that's not so important. That's not so important.
Well, and it fits almost with the persona that he has created for himself of he's a maverick, he is unconventional.
Yes.
And so, again, part of that then allows those followers, that tribe, to be able to say, oh, this is a maneuvering of him in his way of ultimately getting this, and you can reframe that conversation. So he has done a masterful job in being able to create this element where that shifting works. I don't know if in this case he can, because I think it's actually very personal. It was one of his very first promises. It's core
a campaign promise, yeah.
His building. Although I think there's probably a way out where it is. This was a step in my negotiation tactics, and we'll continue on it. It's not foregone. We haven't lost. This is just a step in the process, maybe.
Yeah. Whereas in the UK, Theresa May doesn't have that kind of flexibility. She was, she was brought into power to do one thing. She was given the PM job, elected into that position to do one thing very specifically, and that was make Brexit happen.
Right.
And so she is in I think a bigger world of hurt when it comes to making all of the elements. All of the elements of making the Brexit deal work rest on her shoulders.
Right. And so for her, that consistency is vital, because she cannot back down from it, even when maybe the sentiment within the UK right now is to go and do another referendum, right? But that would be inconsistent with what she has stated and the kind of statement that she has gone ahead and made about
that. And even though Parliament didn't get behind her with a vote to validate the deal, when Jeremy Corbyn, the opposition party, called for a vote of no confidence, the party got behind her. Mm-hmm. The party did get behind her to say, okay, we may not be buying the deal that she's brought to the table, but we still buy her. We still buy, our prime minister. And so they are lining up rank and file to a large degree behind the prime minister as the leader, just not the deal.
Yeah. It's interesting. So
it's complex. I think that there's some real complexities there.
It is complex. And I think the pieces that I find interesting about this, so consistency with in our own lives, that consistency is really important, because that's how people trust, right? This is an element. If you say something, and then you do something else. If I say, I'm going to do X, and then all of a sudden you go and do Y, without a really rational reason or some reason, that lends itself into, a disbelief and a lack of trust. In the political world, I think there's some of that same. There's that component on an individual level, but it gets magnified because you're in this public sphere and the public spotlight.
Yeah.
And it's the famous flip-flop thing that got. Who was the politician that was all started for?
That was John Kerry.
Oh yes, there you go. See, that's why I have you around. So, and in that campaign, he got lambasted for having, he voted for Iraq, the war, and now he's against it, and
Right.
changing his viewpoints. I don't know. So I think it's important that consistency is important. It's important on a personal level. It's important to build the trust in various different things. It's important for people within our tribe. And I think it's important on that political level as well.
Absolutely. And if we bring it back to the personal level, that our interpersonal relationships rely on trust.
Yeah.
And without consistency, it's going to be really, really hard to have trust.
Right.
Right. So the tribe suffers, the sociological side of it suffers if we don't have interpersonal trust.
And I do think that there is, however cynical you are on politicians, I think that there is a component of that is working in both the Brexit component and the standoff on the wall on both sides. And there's this feeling I need to be consistent with what I have previously stated. And I think that actually has an impact and is part of the reason that we are stuck in this impasse on both of them.
So with that, listeners, thanks very much for checking out a short mini grooving session.
Thank you.
And we always ask this, and if you would take time to just run out and make a quick review, give us a few stars, give us all the stars that you can give us, as it would be ideal.
Yes.
And share some nice words. We really appreciate it. It helps us in the ratings. And as always, keep on grooving.